Hello everyone, and welcome back to WolfQuest The Lost Tales, and you guys like to watch me have a hard time, don't you? Oh my goodness. So, I hinted at this during the last playthrough, and nothing has changed. I was right. You guys picked Ajax, which means we are playing on Bring It On. And oh my goodness, I am so terrified. You guys have no idea how terrified I am. I mean, this is literally all his challenge consists of. We have to play on Bring It On. And, yeah, I couldn't be more scared because we had enough trouble on challenging last time, and I'm really worried that we're gonna have a very difficult time of this, and hopefully we actually do make it through. So, let's look at his stats real fast. So he has 35% strength, so relatively high amongst the wolves that we've had, 55% stamina, and 60% speed. So he's not a slow wolf, but he's also not a super strong wolf, and he shouldn't lose his stamina too quickly. So I went with a pretty balanced pretty balanced stats here in hopes that that will help us, because we definitely are going to need the strength to be able to hunt well, but I also don't want to lose too much speed or stamina, because we're going to need those to be able to we're going to need those to be able to survive in Bring It On. Oh my goodness, and look how much health we're losing here too. Oh man, okay, we're getting kind of offset here in a weird way. Yeah, so we lost a lot of health there, and this is what playing on Bring It On is like. I'm a little worried because we've only managed to survive. Well, we've managed to survive on Bring It On. Oh, we're already full. Of course, that makes sense. What am I thinking here? We didn't lose any health fighting that rabbit. Or I should call it a hare. It is technically a hare. It's not a rabbit. There is a difference, and I always get that mixed up. But yeah, so I'm a little worried because I think we've only successfully made it on Bring It On, I want to say 3 times? Possibly 4? No, 3 times. We made it once with Nova and twice with Knight. And I guess technically 2.5, because the first time with Knight we started out playing on Arduous and then switched to Bring It On. So we made it 2.5 times on Bring It On before, out of many times, or several times of attempting it. Because Aurora never had to play on Bring It On, I believe. She didn't have to, what am I saying here? She didn't have to play on Bring It On because of her challenge. Knight had to play on it twice because of what happened to him. If you guys haven't heard that, if you haven't seen that, go watch Season 4. Season 4 was crazy. And so Knight had to play on Bring It On twice. Nova played on Bring It On and made it. Andromeda played on Bring It On and didn't make it with all 4 pups. Kaya never had to play on Bring It On because of what happened to her in Season 2. And, Katari and Terrell didn't make it with all 4 pups. They actually lost 2. And so, yeah, I'm a little scared because we don't have a great track record for that. We've had some issues playing on Bring It On, and it does scare me a little bit to think that we're gonna have to do that this time. So, yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see if this is going to be as difficult as I'm afraid it will. We're already taking a lot of damage just doing the hunting, and it does feel like more than normal, so I'm a little concerned. Hopefully it won't be too much. I'm a little worried too because we're gonna have to winter hunt, and that's gonna be incredibly difficult. Because we're gonna have to hunt a lot. We basically, in Bring It On, you hunt beforehand, and if you don't make it beforehand, then you're done for, because, like, if you don't manage to hunt enough, if you run out of food, you're done for. There's not a lot you can do about it, and, yeah. That's, pretty much just a bad situation all the way around. It'll be interesting to see how difficulty works in the new version of the game, because we don't actually know how it's going to work. I haven't heard anything about difficulty, I don't think. I'm not sure they've mentioned difficulty at all. And at this point in the game, I don't know if they've even worked on implementing it yet. I imagine it could affect health and damage, possibly, but I don't know. And maybe things like pup hunger, your hunger, whatever. But I don't know how that's gonna work or not. I mean, the new game works so differently that it's really hard to say how that actually might pan out. And so I guess we'll kind of just have to wait and see how it ends up working. Hopefully there still are difficulty levels. It's nice to be able to have those because we actually use them to simulate aging in a lot of cases. And so the default playthrough when we're playing through 4 litters, like we usually do, is we'll play the first one on challenging, the second one on pretty easy, and then the third one on arduous, and the fourth one on bring it on. And what that simulates kind of is the first one's a little bit more difficult because obviously you have inexperienced wolf parents who don't know what they're doing, they've never had to raise pups before, they're still figuring things out, so it's a little bit more difficult. The second time around isn't so bad, they have some experience, they've already done this before, they're still in their prime, so they're not slowing down too much or anything. I've lost the elk herd. So the next one gets to be pretty easy, but then after that they start getting a little bit older and things start getting a little bit more difficult as they're just starting to slow down with age a bit. And so their third one will be on arduous, and then the fourth one will be even harder on bring it on. And so that's kind of how we use the system currently. But depending on how that works out in the new version, I don't know if we're going to want to do that or not. It sounds like it's both going to be more difficult and more forgiving. It's certainly going to be more realistic, and so we'll have to see how that affects it. I really can't speak to the difficulty at this point because we don't know how it's going to affect things. Oh, they came over here. That's why I couldn't find them. They walked up this way. But yeah, so we don't really know how it's going to affect things, and I don't know if there will be a difficulty system at all. I imagine there probably will be. Because the game is getting so much more involved, and since WolfQuest, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a kid's game, but it's geared towards all ages, and so there are kids who play it, and then there are adults like me who play it and enjoy it as well. And when you have kids playing a game, though, you want to be able to, you know, especially a lot younger kids, you want to be able to have lower difficulty levels so it doesn't get frustrating, and for sometimes even for experienced adult players who just aren't good at the game. For some reason, I'm actually pretty good at playing WolfQuest, but I don't know if that will be the case in the new version or not. There are definitely games that I like to play on easy mode because otherwise they're just too darn difficult. But whenever you have a game that's geared towards a wide audience and not just towards the really, I guess you would call them hardcore gamers, you want to have some sort of difficulty system that accommodates for the more casual players, for younger players, for players who just aren't good at the game, and whatever that may be, you want to make sure that as many people can have a fun experience as possible. It doesn't necessarily work with massively multiplayer games or whatever, because then you could have some people who set it just too easy, and it just it wouldn't scale the same. But with a game like WolfQuest, it's important to have difficulty levels, and so unless the game itself somehow directly accommodates that, unless the way the game works, it enables the player to create their own challenges, basically, you're probably going to want to have difficulty levels, and so we'll have to see how that pans out in the future. So generally, that's how that works. And so it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing with that, or not doing with that, because you never know. What I mean by saying, basically, if the game lets you set your own difficulty by how you play, that would be something like the basic playthrough has kind of a certain level of difficulty that's usually not too hard, but you can choose to play in a more reckless playstyle that might make it more difficult or whatever. That is an option, but generally with something like this, I think global difficulty levels are helpful, and so hopefully that will be something that we see persist into WolfQuest 3 as well. So far so good, though. We've actually been making pretty good time. We've killed several elk, and how much experience do we have? We've got 510, so we've got to kill 3 more elk. We've been making pretty good time already, and so that seems to be good. We'll probably get through the Amethyst Mountain mission today, which is always a good thing. If the Amethyst Mountain mission runs overtime, then that can cause problems. Uh-oh, we're stuck against the tree there. If you can get this done in a reasonable amount of time, then usually you don't have too many problems, and we're going to want to have as much time as possible in Slough Creek, or I guess technically it doesn't really matter because I do so much of the winter hunting off screen, so it doesn't, that's usually the biggest difference in time between playing on pretty easy and playing on Bring It On or any of the levels in between. you spend more time winter hunting because you have to have more food. So that's usually the biggest difference in the time spent here. But it's still nice to not have to spend quite as much time here. Oh man, we are losing a lot of health. Hello, I don't like that. There we go. Alright, we're okay. I was a little worried for a moment there. I just started to hesitate a little bit and was like, great, what happens if we actually die right now? But we wouldn't have died. We would have been able to go get food at any of these other carcasses that I brought down over here. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, because right now there is a definite difference in difficulty levels. It's definitely much harder to raise your pups on Bring It On than it is to actually raise them on any other level. And I'm hoping that we can actually get the achievement this time, because what I think happens, because I don't think we've gotten the achievement for making it with all 4 pups on Bring It On. I don't think we've ever actually gotten that, and you guys might be saying, well, Jay, why would that be? You've played on Bring It On before. Well, I'm pretty sure what happens is that the game calculates it from the time you start the game. And so, since we start all of our wolves on challenging, then the game would take that into account and say, well, you didn't play on Bring It On the whole time, so you don't get the achievement. I'm pretty sure that is what's happened, and it does make sense, because otherwise people could get almost all the way to the rendezvous site and then switch the difficulty and get the achievement, and that's cheaty. So, it makes sense that they've done it that way, but it does make it a little bit harder when we're playing generationally, because we start almost all of our wolves on the challenging difficulty, and so that means we're not as likely to get that achievement, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. But with something like this, then we should be able to try and get that achievement, and hopefully we'll actually succeed at it, and hopefully we'll finally be able to get that under our belt. I think there's very few achievements in this game that I haven't actually gotten, because I've played so much of this, and not only that, but part of the job of a beta tester is to test the achievements, and so there's very few things that I haven't done just for the sake of doing them to make sure they work. So that is that's the reason why you guys may have noticed we got remarkably few achievements through the course of all of our WolfQuest playthrough. You may have expected us to get a lot more. Well, the reason for that is that I already got a bunch of them just through doing all the playtesting, and just making sure everything works properly. So, yeah, that's actually the reason I've gotten so many of the achievements already, but I think I haven't necessarily gotten all the difficulty level ones, and so that might be something that we get to do through here, and hopefully we can finally get that one. I don't think we got it with Night. I'm trying to remember if there was an update or not that changed it so that it's only when you're playing through Slough Creek, specifically, because it asks you what difficulty you want to play in whenever you have pups, and I can't remember if there was an update that changed it to be from the time you have pups or not. But I don't think there was. I don't think we've gotten that achievement, so this might be a good chance to actually get it, because if we go here, so if we see in the not pack stats, we go to game settings, you'll see the white outline indicates the lowest difficulty you've selected in the game, and that's what locks your achievement. And so, since Bring It On is the lowest difficulty that we've ever played as, we should be eligible for the achievement if we make it with all of our pups. So, we'll see. We'll see if we manage to be able to have that finally work out. Do we actually have enough? I was just in pack stats and I didn't look. Okay, we do have enough. So Ajax is the son of Night, I believe, so we're gonna avoid the Druid territory. I mean, we might poke around down there if we go to the other territories. But again, generally I try to avoid the packs that I know our wolves are descended from. And granted, okay, we could be poking around down there and might run into a dispersal that's not actually from that pack, but that's just looking around by that pack, that came from somewhere else to try and find a mate, just like we did. But generally I try to avoid that, because I feel like it'd be pretty instinctual in a wolf's mind to avoid, because wolves have instincts to help them avoid inbreeding. And inbreeding is bad because it causes all kinds of genetic problems. And so they have to have some sort of instinct that that tells them not to do that, because, I mean, obviously as humans, we have the mental capacity to think about it and go, That's creepy, don't do that. But wolves don't think about things in the same way as we do. They perceive the world through instinct. And so they have to have an instinct that tells them to leave their pack so that they can find an unrelated wolf to take as their mate, because otherwise they would be risking genetic issues. And there's just all kinds of bad things that happen genetically when you start dealing with inbreeding, and that's a big problem for for animals that are, the more endangered an animal becomes, the more inbreeding becomes a problem, because you have less of a gene pool to choose from. Oh, we have a dispersal female here, okay. So she doesn't have mange, that's good. That's something we always look for. We want to be careful not taking a mate with mange. We already had a side story that involved mange, and we saw how much of a problem it was, so we don't want to mate with mange if we can help it. But I think, you know, I like her. I think we'll go ahead and choose her, and we'll take her as our mate. But yeah, so that's the reason that's one of the biggest instinctive reasons that wolves will disperse, is to basically the reason that exists is otherwise, because if you think about the fact that a pack is often parents and offspring, well, all the other wolves in the pack are going to be related to any given wolf, and so there's not really anyone that they could choose as a mate there. And with that in mind, then they have to go someplace else to find a mate. And so instinct tells them to do that so that they don't have the genetic problems that come along with inbreeding. And so it's a way of keeping the population healthy, of avoiding all the problems that can come with inbreeding, because again, inbreeding does all kinds of bad stuff, and that's why a lot of, if you look at dogs and you look at a lot of purebred dogs, a lot of them actually have some pretty major problems, and that's because when you have a purebred line, at some point you start to run out of the population of that line, because there's been so much, the lines all start to merge together and you end up with inbreeding, basically. So I'm going to pause here and we will go ahead and name her. So I'm going to actually name her Isla. So that means whirlwind, and it's based off of Greek mythology, just like Ajax's name is, and so I figured it was a fitting name for her. We've got a little extra time, so we'll go ahead and run around a bit, and I'll just talk a bit more about that. But that is why you see issues with purebred dogs in many cases, because the further down a line, so like if you start with 4 different breeding pairs, well, to avoid inbreeding, then you'll have to take one offspring from each pair and breed them, so then you only have 2 lines, and then those lines will become 1 line, and the further down you go, the less different distinct lines you have, because the more they're connected, the further back you go. And so that's why when you have a population of endangered animals that's rapidly declining in numbers, it's not just dangerous because you're losing those animals, it's dangerous because you're losing the genetic diversity that an individual might have. And so that's why animals becoming endangered is such a big problem, because not only does the species as a whole have the risk of dying out, but even if you manage to bring those numbers back, it may never be as healthy as it would have been because you've lost genetic diversity. And so that's why there's so many issues there. But that's kind of the science side behind wolves dispersing. Now, of course, they're not consciously thinking about it the way we would. I mean, humans perceive the world differently. They have the ability to think about the long term. They have the ability to look at the species, the world as a whole. Wolves are looking at what's best for their survival and what's best for the survival of their pack, and so they're going, I'm hungry, I need to hunt. Whereas we're over here going, we need to look at the sustainability of this crop to make sure that it doesn't run out and that we don't overeat our food source. Wolves aren't doing that. They're not looking at the specifics of it in the way that humans do. And so they have their instincts to guide them instead. When they're hungry, their instincts say hunt. When they're ready to find a mate, their instincts say leave your pack. And so they do that. And so I feel like there probably would be some level of instinct that would help them avoid wolves that could potentially be related to them. And so that's why we don't usually take Nova or Knight's descendants to the Druid pack, because we know we have a Druid wolf in our lineage. Now, at some point down the line, okay, it probably won't be as big of a deal, because also the further removed you get, I mean, you go back far enough, everyone's related way back in history, but it's no longer an issue. So we're going to stay on Amethyst Mountain. We'll leave at the end of the episode. But it's no longer an issue because the human population is so huge and diverse, those connections are so distant, that the amount of genetics you'd have in common with someone has diluted over the years, basically. But when you're within a few generations like this, then it is a problem, it is a danger. Hey, there's a fox! I didn't know there were foxes down here. Oh, look, and he's hunting too. But yeah, so the further down the line you get, the less of an issue too it becomes, because you have more new genetics coming in. But again, that's the problem with endangered species or with purebred dogs or whatnot, because when you have only a small number of individuals within a population, then there's not a lot of unique genetics to begin with, whereas with the human population, or with the population of any species as a whole that's large and not endangered, there's a lot of genetics to choose from. And so even though there's common ancestors way down the line somewhere, there's now enough difference that it's not it's not a problem. That the genetic diversity isn't an issue. Now that's the science side of inbreeding and why it's bad. Now, of course, it's different when you have humans who can look at that from a grander perspective of things. It's different than just the instinctual, I shouldn't do this because it's genetically bad and my instincts are telling me not to do it. Obviously that's the difference there. But again, you're going to have genetic issues if you start inbreeding, and so that's one of the issues that can come with it. So that was kind of a weird and long-winded talk. I apologize for that. But that's just kind of the explanation of why we don't usually look for mates from the Druid pack with these descendants. Here's a coyote. We're going to take this guy down. We'll leave the foxes be because they don't really pose that much of a threat to us. Oh my goodness, Ayla! Or Isla. I'm going to pronounce her Ayla probably a lot, but it's technically pronounced Isla. She just came and stood right there and blocked the coyote. Wow, okay, she's got a good head on her shoulders. I like her. And with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode here for today, I think, because it's about that time again. So we're going to go ahead and end off this episode. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. But until then, this is Jay, over and out.